What are we talking about today, Sarah?
Happy Thursday,
Woo!
people. What is this music?
It is Minimal House created by the Music AI.
Oh,
I feel like we're like inside the Minimal House neural network right now.
yeah. Certainly feels it.
So today we are working with some cool stuff. So I'm Hunter. I'm one of the Light Magic co-founders, and Sarah, the one and only. She's a boss. Watch out for her. Uh,
Having a little house party vibe going on today.
I know, right? I mean, if we're gonna do these, we might as well have fun, right?
Exactly.
So, Sarah, you're also the co-founder, and you're gonna walk me through one of our spells at Light
Mhm.
Magic. We're casting spells with our partner Respell.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I thought today's session we would go a little bit deeper into the neural network and what's possible with AI because I think I've been doing a few of these sessions and I'm always kind of going on about how I think that 2024 is going to be different, where we're going to be less focused on chatting with AI and more towards applying and integrating AI in the way that we work and our workflows. And so, what I wanted to do was show an example of what it looks like when you can actually delegate something to AI and how that whole process works. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think, Hunter?
Ooh. Sorry, I was firing up the chat. Yes, I completely agree. That like the chatbot was sort of like, for me, it felt like the way in. It was
Mhm.
like not even the door, but the window, right? Where I could like crack open the window and be like, what is going on in this bananas house over here? Because that was my way in too, right? Like when ChatGPT 4, my first use of it, I was like, holy smokes, this is game changing. This is going to change everything. And that was really the rabbit hole that I went down. And I think a lot of people share that experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously that was the doorway into this whole world of AI. And I think while adoption has been increasing and people have been starting to integrate how they use ChatGPT and how they start to use these systems and getting better at prompting, we're getting to a stage where it feels like to me that people are going, okay, but I've trained this chat window on my prompt and the way that I want to frame things up and the way that I want to get the output. But then I'm still stuck in this backwards and forwards sort of scenario. Um, and it feels like, there's a lot of conversation around how ChatGPT can help create your content and write your blogs. And, you use it, a lot of people are using it for that particular process. But what I wanted to do today is open up the world of possibilities of what's that next level up? What does that look like? And so, what I wanted to show today is an example of how you can take a really intricate and complex um, workflow that takes a lot of detail, a lot of time, a lot of skill set to actually pull together and being able to delegate it to AI. So this example is actually for our company, as in outside of Light Magic. My husband and I work together. He kind of leads that side of things. So he's got an investigative interview company which trains auditors, investigators, police departments on how to interview ethically. So part of his training that he provides to these organizations is he um, does what's called scenario-based training. So in scenario-based training, the idea is that you are able to create like a simulation in effect of how a role play a situation of what would happen in like an investigation or in an interview and be able to apply the knowledge that you've learned from the theory into practice. So that's how they sort of are able to embed the learning from the theory part into practice. And so if you think about it, like these scenarios that they would come up with are very case specific. So like a bank would have a completely different scenario to a police department, to a auditor, to, and they train all sorts of organizations from HR departments to like corporate, retail, all of the different departments you could think of. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of nuance that's involved in these scenarios that they build. And what his team do is that they spend a lot of time reading up on the scenario, like reading up on the regulations that are to do with this particular industry. They work with the client to get an idea of what a typical scenario is that they have to deal with. And then they develop, it takes them hours upon hours, like 10 to 20 hours, to develop these custom built scenarios for each organization and each team. And within each scenario, there are 4 different aspects. So one is from an interviewer's perspective, where he's interviewing, say, a witness and a suspect, and another, which is someone who is role playing the witness and someone who is role playing the suspect. So they all work based off the same scenario, and 4 different, they get 4 different content that's provided to them. So I wanted to show you how we've managed to delegate this. Like, as you can tell, it's a very intricate, very involved, very time-consuming process that requires a lot of subject matter expertise and things like that. And that's this kind of thing that people might think that you can't actually delegate to AI because it is so nuanced and complex. But we, with the power of our platforms that we use, with the power of really, really honed in prompting, we're able to delegate this this project that would take each training scenario would take 10 to 20 hours to build, to something that could be done within seconds. So if it's okay with you, Hunter, I'm going to share my screen. Do you have any questions before I do that?
Well, what makes me think of is it's a perfect use case for AI, actually, because if you've dabbled in prompting, we know, and I think a lot of people know now, you say like, act as if you are blank, like an expert, blah, blah, blah. And we're getting like more and more people are getting used to that. And that's really what you're doing on this. And then you're really taking it to the next level. Is that right?
That's right, because they're essentially acting as these roles. So the people who are doing these scenarios are acting as an interviewer or a witness or a suspect, and they're all essentially having to interact with the same content in different ways and present it in different ways. But we have to train the system so it knows, well, if the scenario that we're creating is provided to the interviewer, we can't give them all of the answers about, like, say, who committed the crime or whatever, because that's what they have to figure out. So that's part of like what we have to do in the prompting itself, is like be really specific about how these different scenarios can apply in different contexts. So I will show you a quick view of what that looks like. So this is our platform that we use for this, called Respel. And we love Respel because of a few different factors. One, that it is amazing to build AI automations in. The second is that we're able to go multimodal, which enables us to test and utilize different models, large language models, whether they be Claude or OpenAI. And within OpenAI, we can access different modules within it, like DALL-E 3 and things like that. So we were able to build this automation that helps us essentially take something that's really complex and delegate it to AI. So I am just going to drive. Let me know if you see this. But
we can see it.
But as you can see here, this is like essentially what they have to do. All they have to do is enter in the organization name, the scenario name, and then the scenario input, which would essentially be like 1 or 2 paragraphs that they would get given from the organization around, like around the scenario itself. And then we have built the prompts in a way that the AI system is able then to take that scenario that has been given and develop it into 4 different content outputs. So, as an example, over here, you can see that we've got our prompt. So, so this is where we have to be really, you know, careful about, or not careful, but very detailed in terms of what we're expecting from the AI system. So as you can see here, it's super specific. And then here's the magic, I guess, of why this works so well is something that we call shot prompts or few shot prompts. So here we're actually training the AI system on what a good output for that particular scenario looks like and what a bad output for that particular scenario looks like. So as you can see here, it's like it takes a lot of work to put these this knowledge together, but this is where the magic actually happens. It's because we're training the AI system to understand in each of these 4 different scenarios what a good output looks like and what a bad output looks like, to the point where it knows how much information to provide and what information to provide for each different scenario type.
So Sarah, that to pause because
Yeah.
you're explaining this so well.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure I'm getting it. So what I'm hearing is it's much different than just saying to like a prompt when you're typing into ChatGPT, when you're just like, oh, tell me about this thing or act as an expert. And then you're just trusting the black box to do whatever it does. But with one shot and few shot, 2 shot prompts, that's when you're actually training your automation, right?
That's right. You're actually so one of the key differences between being able to access, being able to prompt with AI with ChatGPT versus the OpenAI API back is that you have a lot more control through the API on what the system actually does and how creative it could be. So for this particular use cases, we don't want a lot of creativity. We want it to be super, super specific about what a good output looks like. And so that's one of the benefits of working with the OpenAI API when we're building AI solutions is that we can control that. Whereas with ChatGPT, you can't really. It's set at a certain what's called temperature, and that's what you have to work with. So when we were testing it, we did test it in ChatGPT and versus the OpenAI Playground with the temperature controls. So we were able to really see that that we're able to get a much better output, much more accurate output, because we can control the dials essentially of the AI system. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And it's awesome to hear about how there's just so much more power and really like understanding of what is actually happening because you're dialing it in specifically. So with the temperature, you scale it back to 0, so it's less creative for this particular thing, and it's kind of like a guardrail, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically because you've spent a lot of time dialing in the prompt and the output in terms of getting it to where you want it to be for something that's this specific. You want it to be at a lower temperature or you want to turn the dial down in terms of the creativity. And I think that that's one of the things that people can take away from this is that sometimes when you're trying to get ChatGPT to do something for you and it's just not quite getting there, it might be the prompt. It might just be that the system is set at a level where you're always going to have that extra creativity that you can't really do something about. So this is where when it comes to actually building bespoke AI solutions, we love to work with the OpenAI background through an automation platform like Respel, where we can control that and we can actually access different models as well. So say Claude would work better in some scenarios or some particular use cases. And, that's something that you're able to test as well.
Yeah, I find when I switch between Claude and ChatGPT, Claude, there's so much that I appreciate about Claude, and I think it's a really excellent writer, and it has really nice flowing, natural sounding language just on its own out of the gate without me having to do much. And also when I've played with it with stuff on the back end, it'll put up the guardrails, being like, no, I can't do that. Because there'll be like one word
Right.
that sets it off on a path that it thinks is unethical or is just some sort of trigger
Right.
that it won't even, I was chatting with someone and there was some emojis and it was like its next response was trying to apologize for
Right.
being inappropriate because like someone used a fire emoji.
Right. So yeah, that's a really good point Josh has put in the chat. When we talk about creativity with these AI systems, and this is a perfect definition, Josh, creativity in terms of how much do you want the system to deviate from the instructions. So he was tripping over this for a while, but that's the creativity. It's like, do you want it to follow your instructions to the T? Or do you want to give it some of that room to be able to be creative, to bring through, expand the world in which it can operate, essentially? And I think with things like blogging and creating content and things like that, a higher creativity or the level at which you allow the AI system to have that room to move is good. But then when it comes to things like this scenario, and we're getting quite a lot of demand for organizations that are looking to put together, similar to this, not necessarily this particular scenario, but information memorandum. So when like a business goes out to sell, they need documentation around it, right? And that each business is going to have different documentation, but we can create bespoke systems that can pull the information from intake forms and create that in a way that aligns with how these companies actually want to present that information. So it's not, I showed you all of that, which might seem like it's a very out there use case, and how would you even use it for other organizations? But it is to say that you can actually create complex, you can actually delegate to AI complex and nuanced tasks, as long as you know how to build the prompts and build the automations in a way that helps deliver that.
Right, because creativity is, like you said, it can be very helpful with certain projects, and I think that's one of the things that is very inspiring the first time you use one of these things is, as humans, we're attracted to novelty, right? It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting it to do that, and that's interesting, and now I want to figure out how it did that. But when there's a specific task at hand, I don't necessarily want surprises for a client, let's say.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that that's the world that we're starting to explore is going to be more and more as we want to delegate things to AI and tasks to AI. We want it done a certain way. We want it done the way that we would do it. And when we talk about delegating to AI, it might seem like we're describing it in a way where we're completely hands off, but we're always fly by the flag of human in the loop. So even though you can get AI to do 95, 99% of the work for you, and you can actually get it to that level, but it's really important for you to be the person who is monitoring and keeping an eye, or someone to be on these systems to ensure that the outputs that you're getting are consistently where you want them to be. And that's not necessarily to create more work, but because these systems also evolve, and what might have worked one day with a really dialed in prompt, as these systems evolve, that prompt can maybe not produce the level of output that you would have normally gotten. So the human in the loop aspect is always a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always talking about that because, like you said, the evolution within systems, they're adding updates all the time. Sometimes there's big flashy ones that are announced, Other times they're just doing stuff in the background. They're constantly working on stuff. So there's
Mhm.
within the certain systems, and then they'll just roll out, ChatGPT 5 is going to be here
Yeah,
eventually, 6, whatever they're going to call it. And then it's about going in and rewiring it a little bit
yeah,
and refining that and staying informed of what is working and what's not working.
that's right. Yeah. So what are your favorite ways that you're using AI right now?
Oh, what are my favorite ways right now? That's a great question. I've been really experimenting with uh, different versions of creating custom chatbots for internal use. So whether that's through Retune or GPTs or some of the other things that we're playing with these days, that those are becoming really, really powerful for me in my like day-to-day workflow. Like what you said, it's like, oh, I'm not just talking to ChatGPT anymore. Now it's integrated and I have these different personas like you have in your spell there, like these different personas that I've created that I can be like, oh, I'm going to make a post for Bytes and Banter on LinkedIn. That's tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. Help me write that. And I've now trained it, like how you can do in like the GPT store or other services. I've trained it to have a brand voice, right? And to have different brand voices depending on different things because I can train it on different styles of writing, but I'm also finding that sometimes like, again, the novelty is interesting with some of these creative posts. So sometimes I'll be like responding to a message and I'll take it over to like my marketing bot versus my like creative writing bot
Mhm.
and see what my outputs are. And then as the human, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I should mention this thing about this post that maybe the other thing that I trained wouldn't have thought of yet.
Right. It's kinda like having your team, right? It's like a team of
Yes.
bots.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's what's so cool about this tech and what we're able to do, I think, as startups, as entrepreneurs, as solopreneurs. We can now, what some people might say, like punching above our weight, right?
Mhm.
Because now we can, it sounds a little violent. I actually don't like that. But let's just say, like, doing more than we could do before. Like you said, like we have this team that we can create and or have others help us create that then I can use on a daily basis
Yeah.
and be way more productive and have ideas to bounce off of, which is
Mhm.
so great.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to, I think, like, for next year in terms of our team, like Light Magic and how we're approaching things is really building out our internal AI team and being able to truly scale our business because we have access to these really intelligent systems that are trained to understand our business, understand how we want things done, and we can essentially delegate, you know, the things that we would take us years to get to, we can probably achieve in a much shorter time frame because we have access to these systems and we can train these systems to go and do that work for us. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about earlier too, when you said, oh, not like keeping the human in the loop and not to create more work. But when you think about all of the time saved of that spell running or that automation running, like that's hours and hours and hours of time that we don't have to do anymore. And
mhm,
then if it's like you need to schedule in time for like maintenance, it's a pretty good trade-off. Like as we like to say, we're our own best use case, right? We say
yeah,
this all the time, and we're like, yeah, sometimes
yeah,
it needs an update, but that just saved me like 10 hours of writing copy.
and it's like these are things that that team really despise doing. Like everybody wanted
Mhm.
to hand it over to someone else to do, and
Right.
they'd leave it to the last minute because it's just one of those like really drudgerous like it's not hard, it's just really time consuming. And so now having a system built for them where it could essentially do 10, 20 hours worth of work in seconds and cost like under 40 cents is mind blowing. But then that frees them up to be able to serve more clients and, skill up and do all of the things that they really want to do, but this was one more thing on their plate that kind of prevented them from doing it. And that
Yeah.
would apply across the board to different industries and different use cases. So
Yeah, because that I can definitely see it's easy to wrap the head around of like, oh, solopreneur, startup, mid-level size company, of how there's everyone's multitasking, most people are doing more than one job, but then also it does scale up to larger companies without having to, at least I know you and I agree on this, without having to do mass layoffs and replace people with
mhm.
AI, because there's still internal teams. Like there's these giant companies, but they're all in these little silos, right? And they all have all these different things to do. And if we're empowering people to have these tools within their silo teams, then they can still focus on all the stuff. Because, like, I forget the numbers, but how many hours are we spending on email alone, right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about, what, because of all of this intelligence and these intelligence systems that we're going to have in our fingertip, like what does it look like for someone, like what does success look like, for people who are in the workforce and using these systems? And I wonder sometimes if it's like the era of the T-shaped individual where you're a generalist because you can really connect the dots between different things. So, um, if you're looking at working within AI and implementing AI within your organization or your team, you understand all of the different general aspects of each different team member or what they do, but then you're very specialist in your AI focus. And you're able to then like serve and be able to support teams because you understand broadly what needs to be achieved, but you have a very specific skill set around AI and its application. So
Yeah, I love that. It really is the era of the T shape of the generalist. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think
I'm a
that makes
fan
a
of
lot
that
of
because
sense.
that's what I am.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm a generalist, and
Yeah.
it's always been about, being really specialist in your role. But I think that as things start consolidating because of these systems and how they do a lot of the work for you, you're almost gotta have like a bit of a generalist mindset. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just
Something I've been thinking. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, just a thought.
Yeah, no, I love that thought. And something I've been thinking about that's related to that is, as we've been bringing on, as clients have been approaching us,
Yeah.
what's really, really exciting and cool, and I know we've all gotten lit up. Yeah, Suzanne, giving you some shout out. Yes, shout out to all
Yes,
the
you're a
generalists in the
generalist.
house. But what's really cool is, as clients have been coming to us, they're specialists in
Yeah.
their lane, right? Like they have a very specific use case of, we do this thing and we want that achieved. And a lot of them are coming to the table with a generalist understanding of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when really interesting conversations happen.
Mm-hmm.
I love getting people from 0 to 1, but when people are coming to the table already with a generalist understanding of how AI works,
Yeah,
it's an exciting first conversation because they can see all of the dots, but they just don't know how to connect them yet.
that's
And
right.
then we have specialists. I think we are all generalists in our team, but some of us, we all have our zones of genius, right?
Yeah.
That we excel in. And when we pair up our zones of genius with these people that are in there as well, and you put it to
Mhm.
AI, it's like completing the T for like
That's
this
right.
workflow for people.
That's right. I think it's like, um, we get really excited working with people who have such deep subject matter expertise because we know how these systems can be unlocked to actually, that's when the magic happens, is when you have people with really deep subject matter expertise and people who understand how these systems work. And then you put those two things together, and that is really where the magic, that's where you see things that you couldn't believe would be possible with AI. But the point being is that then you're able to take someone's subject matter expertise and have it scale.
Expertise.
Yeah. So I think that's really exciting, for us when we're working with people like that as well. And we do have, quite a few people who are able to do a lot of different things. Yeah, we're like a T-shaped team, right? We do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Well, that was it. 30 minutes and 30 seconds. Look at us. I'm proud of us. This is great.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, I love your builds. I love seeing your Mad Hatter brain, and you explain it so well when we get inside the little networks of your spells and such. So this has been great. Friends, thank you for your participation and chats, comments in the chat. We love that.
Yeah,
And tomorrow, if you want to jump up on the screen with us, we have our bites and
banter.
yes, which was coined by Sarah. Beautiful,
Well,
wonderful.
it was coined by an LLM.
True.
But I had a really good prompt, so there you go.
By your team of LLMs, right?
That's
It's your
right.
team. So join us tomorrow. We posted about it. We'll repost about it. And what that is it's an hour open discussion. It's a Zoom link is posted on the event. We'll post the event's already up, but the link will be there tomorrow. And then it'll also be broadcasted on LinkedIn Live. But then you can just hop on in and say hi and talk about your use cases, your wins, your silly stories, your flubs, all the things.
Yeah, it's our community focused event, and they're so much fun. I know Suzanne was there last week. I tuned
cool.
in. She had a lot of cool questions. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you for being part of this chat. And Suzanne's going to join us tomorrow. So anyone who wants to hop in the chat, it's on 12 o'clock Eastern for an hour. We all bring your lunch, whatever.
You can take a bite. We can banter.
Exactly. And we'll all sort of just have it as an open mic. People can jump in with their questions, with their use cases, with their thoughts about what the world would look like next year, because, things are changing up fast.
They're changing fast, and I got some ideas, and I love hearing everybody else's.
Yeah. Great.
Hey.
We'll see you all tomorrow.
Outro. I'll see you tomorrow.